6 rules of etiquette you had to follow in Regency England. Number 1. Do not dance with the same gentleman more than twice. A lady's reputation must be above reproach. At a ball, you would expect to dance with most people once. The master of ceremonies would introduce people as the rules were such that people who hadn't met could not approach each other to dance. A second dance signified the couple wanted to get to know each other better. A third, and eyebrows would be raised. People would begin to whisper about a possible engagement. A third dance could really affect a lady's reputation. Also, leaving a ball early before it had finished was also considered really rude. So in Bridgerton, when Daphne leaves the ball early after her argument with Simon, people would have noticed and they would have considered it a little bit rude. Number 2, the art of the swoon. Faint if you hear something shocking. If a lady was exposed to something shocking like bad language or terrible manners, it would seem quite appropriate for them to faint or swoon. So again, in Bridgerton, when Lady Cowper was just acting like a well-bred lady when she swooned at the ball in front of the prince. So ladies were expected to be sensitive and needing the support and protection of men, something which tends to get on Eloise's nerves, and quite rightly so in my opinion. Number 3, do not be alone with a man. A lady's reputation had to be beyond approach. Any lady below the age of 30 was not permitted to be alone with a man without a chaperone. Otherwise, this would risk her reputation quite severely. Now, the chaperone could be another lady or a gentleman or even a servant. But if the lady did suffer an incident like this and her reputation was tarnished, it would ultimately affect not just her, but the reputation of her whole family. So, for example, in Pride and Prejudice, when Lydia elopes with Wickham, all the Bennet sisters' reputations would suffer too. They'd kind of be tarred with the same brush. And in Bridgerton, Anthony gets super angry when he finds Simon and Daphne in the garden. This is because this meeting alone was a huge risk to the reputation of their entire family. Follow mourning rules. There were certain rules that were quite strict around mourning, and a lady again had to follow these to upkeep a good reputation. Isn't this constant worrying about reputation actually quite exhausting? Anyway, after the death of an immediate family member, a lady must wear black, and this had to be worn for 12 months if your husband died, or 6 months for a parent or a parent-in-law, and 3 months for a sibling or aunt or uncle. Also, you couldn't wear any fancy jewellery during the mourning period, and no shiny fabrics, even though they were quite fashionable at the time. This was considered inappropriate. Also, all social engagements had to be refused for 1 year. So no balls. So imagine Lydia in Pride and Prejudice not going to a ball for a year. I think she would just die. Or picnics or anything fun at all. After a time, a lady goes into half mourning, but there were still rules that you could only wear grey or lilac, and modest jewellery could be worn. You could also attend some social events like a ball, but you still can't dance yet, as that was considered really inappropriate. Best manners at the dinner party. There were even unspoken rules for dinner parties that everyone had to follow. The host would create a seating plan, and she would seat the male guest of honour to her right while she was head of the table. So think Lady Catherine de Bourgh's formal dinner party in Pride and Prejudice. So you should also dress for dinner. You would be considered really rude if you just rocked up in your day dress and hadn't bothered to change into evening wear. Dinner parties were really long affairs, and they could be anything from 5 to 25 courses. The first course was invariably soup, and it was considered rude for someone to refuse the soup. So even if you didn't want it or if you didn't like it, you would accept it, and then you would just toy with it and move your spoon around the bowl and not eat it. It's better to do that than to refuse. Now, personally, I think the worst rule for a lady at the dinner party has to be that she's not really allowed to ask for wine. She would have to wait to be offered it, because otherwise she'd be seen as being a little bit rude. And also she'd have to sip only a little wine because she doesn't want to be accused of having masculine drinking habits. Tantalizing touches. If you've watched any costume drama, you will notice that touching is really sparse. Again, touching was kept to a minimum, and a lady had to follow these unspoken rules to again protect her reputation. So, for a lady, even shaking hands with a gentleman was a no no and seen as far too overfamiliar. Only gentlemen would shake other gentlemen's hands, and even then, a man would only shake the hand of another man who was in the same social rank. So, for example, he would never shake the hand of a servant. As an alternative, a lady could squeeze the hand of a man she had already been introduced to. So think that famous scene in the Pride and Prejudice 2005 where Mr. Darcy does the hand flex, which everybody loves. That was just a squeeze of the hand. On the other hand, a lady may permit a man to put a shawl around her shoulders, and I think that happens in Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson and Edward Ferrars, or she can be helped on and off a horse. So I guess Persuasion, Captain Wentworth lifts Anne Elliot onto the back of a carriage, and there's a few other costume dramas where that happens quite often. She may even offer her hand to kiss, but any further touches or any lingering touches or very passionate hand kissing would be the subject of gossip. So again, even touching there are rules around that. And if you notice in costume dramas, quite often when they're dancing, the ladies are wearing gloves, or if they do touch hands, it's almost fingertip touching. So very limited. Cool. Well, I hope you enjoyed these rules of Regency etiquette. And how easy would you find it to follow these rules? Put it in the comments and let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.